Welcome back to Parde Ke Piche, a podcast dedicated to exploring Indian cinema through a critical lens, with your host, Ankur Desai and Raeesa Farooqi.
Today's episode is our series finale in exploring Hindi cinema's transition to modern Bollywood. If you haven't done so already, we kindly ask you to check out the first two episodes after listening to this one.
In the first two episodes, we looked at how India transitioned from a post colonial country in the late 40s and early 50s to a tumultuous era of political oppression in the 70s.
We looked at various Bollywood films, such as Mother India, Yadon Ki Barat, Shri 420, and Diwar, which often reflected the problems and times of the era the films were set in.
With today's episodes, we are finally examining how the liberalization of Indian economy in the 90s coincided with the release of films such as Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge, Pardes, Hum Aapke Hai Kaun, and how the non-resident Indian market became a key demographic for those films.
Super excited for this episode. We're both 90s babies.
Yeah.
And this is what we know.
And this is like I think that's how we started with Bollywood. That we talked about this in the first episode, that with me it was like Karan Arjun, with you it was...
What was it? I don't even remember. Oh yeah, it was that Amitabh Bachchan film. I still haven't figured out the title. Okay. But the films, the one big film we're going to talk about today, I think was everyone
everyone knows it. And it's like the most revered one in terms of like 90s Bollywood.
Yeah.
Every one of my Indian friends or people who like Bollywood know this movie because it's iconic in every sense of the word, and it's also like the one movie everyone just knows if you're born in the 90s, because it's so, I guess, relevant in a way, but also just like culturally relevant, socially relevant, but also just cinematically,
especially for people who live abroad, like Indians who live abroad. I think this film was not for everyone, but for many people who moved from India to the West. I think this was a film they resonated a lot with. And the film we're talking about is Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge.
Also known as its acronym DDLJ.
Yes, I'd rather say DDLJ because that is a very long title. Released in 1995. It was directed by Aditya Chopra. And I think produced by Yash Chopra.
Yeah. His dad, who connection to the third episode, which was about Diwar. And Diwar was done by Yash Chopra.
Yeah. So nepotism is always here. I think, every time.
I don't think we can talk about Bollywood without there being some nepotism.
Yeah, kind of,
it's
hand in hand.
Yeah, exactly.
Part of the package. And the screenplay was also done by Aditya Chopra.
So it's a film about NRIs, which is non-resident Indians. A good way of looking at it is like understanding it, at least, is like the Indian diaspora. These are people who moved from India, away from India during any era, really, like whether it be the 90s, the 80s, 70s, whatever, and they just moved to countries like England, Canada, Australia, America,
the West
pretty much. And it's really a film about that, not really about the struggle as such, but just the younger generations kind of wanting to break free from the mold of being Indian, but at the same time the film isn't too radical. So that's like the interesting thing about the film, or viewing the film, is as an NRI, like how true is it to the experience?
Yeah, and it's basically like, I agree with that, but it's also like how do you stay Indian even once you're in the West?
Yeah.
Basically, the film is about this guy, Baldev Singh, played by Amrish Puri, and his family in London. So he has his wife, played by
Farida Jalal.
Yes, Farida Jalal. Better known as like, I don't know, India's Nani.
Yeah, pretty much. She's like any movie post like 1990s. She's always in there, and she's always playing a mother figure.
Yeah, when I see her, I'm like, oh, she's the good one.
Yeah,
she's
exactly. She's the good, wholesome, exactly.
Nani.
She won't like mess up like the love story or anything.
Yeah, she's rooting for the
exactly
the heroes. Anyway, so that's his wife, and he has 2 daughters, and the movie centered around Simran, who's an 18-year-old girl played by Kajol, and how she dreams of a life of freedom and the man of her dreams. Yeah. There's a great song where she's just talking about the man of her dreams. And basically she, wants to live freely. She's in London after all. But her dad says, no, I made a promise. Yeah, I made a promise to a friend of mine back in Punjab that you would get married to his son. So she's like, okay, fine, I'll follow your rules, but can I just go for a month with my girlfriends across Europe on a train? And she goes.
And she goes and she meets Raj Malhotra, who's played by Shah Rukh Khan, and he is more of is independent NRI compared to Simran, who's really like in a conservative household. So she's like kept under strict parents, and so Shah Rukh Khan's character, he's like, he just failed university,
which is a tradition in his family.
Which is a tradition in his family, but his dad is very proud of him for keeping that tradition going. And basically, this guy is set up to fail upwards. Like, there's nothing. He's kind of privileged in a sense because
and super spoiled.
Super spoiled. And so he's going on this trip with his friends, and Simran is going on a trip with her friends, and they meet in the same train. It's Bollywood. And their journey is really. There's a little setback because she misses her train with her friends, and he misses this exact same train because they were out partying, and they basically make it a pact with each other to get to their friends, but also along the way they fall in love because it's Bollywood.
Yes.
And once they fall in love with each other, Kajol has to move back to Punjab because her parents find out about Raj and
her dad.
Yeah, her
basically
dad
finds out.
And so they move back to Punjab for the wedding. Shah Rukh Khan comes to rescue her, and there's a lot of drama, like masala drama, involving her like promised husband, whose name is Kuljit Singh, and once the movie, with Kuljit Singh, and there's fights, there's comedy, there's song and dance, and at the end, Shah Rukh Khan and Kajol get to be with each other after getting Chaudhry Baldev Singh's blessing.
So lovely.
Yeah.
I do not like this film. How about you, Ankur? What are your thoughts on this film?
Okay, so I watched this movie when I was pretty young. I was like 7 years old or something, and I didn't like it then. Because I was just like, it was really long. The movie's like, I think 3 hours.
Yeah, it does not. It's like, 6, 8 songs, something like that?
6, 8 songs. Yeah. And I just, being like a little shitty, bratty kid, I was just like, it's a love story. Ugh. There's no fights or anything.
Yeah.
So I didn't like it for that reason. But now I've come to appreciate it because, not just as a movie, but because what it represents in being an NRI and like what it represents of being an NRI in India.
Sure.
And how it talks about that relationship. But also as a movie too, there are moments that I really love in this movie. One particular one that comes to my mind is the moment before Tujhe Dekha To Ye Jana Sanam starts playing.
Mm-hmm.
So when they meet in Punjab for the first time, I think that's like one of the best moments in cinema.
Definitely
ever.
very iconic.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah.
For me, it's I've changed throughout the time.
I think I was the opposite. I enjoyed it as a kid.
Really?
I mean, it was, it's fun to see these people off on a trip and having all this fun. But I think now I actually don't really like it that much. And I think it's more to do with sort of like the underlying patriarchal sort of nuances behind it. And yeah, I think more from like when you're looking at it from the point of view of like the woman, which we can talk about more, it just gets so aggravating to watch. And it has a lot to do with how they talk about like still being Indian as an NRI. It always comes back to like reinforcing these patriarchal themes, and I can't get behind it. And honestly, the characters are kind of shitty.
No, you're absolutely right. Like when it comes to depicting this politics, like the sexual politics of the film and the politics of being NRI or the Indian diaspora, I don't think it doesn't hold up. I think it might hold up if you lived in India your entire life and you have cousins who are NRIs, because you just see the bright side of being that. You might see the struggle of it because you're constantly being told that, but I think you're always being shown the positive. And DDLJ does not hold up in sense of showing the true reality of it. Yes, you struggle and yes, you find success, but even within the success, it's not as fulfilling. And there are better films that depict that. So you're absolutely right that there's certain aspects of this movie that are problematic. So I think like if I guess we can backtrack a bit since this is a 3-part series and we're talking about the transition. So we always started with like the historical context at the time, or like economic context. So as you mentioned in the beginning, India was sort of being liberated right now in its economy. And it had a lot to do with NRIs. So basically, NRIs were Indians who went abroad and then made money. And I think prior to the 90s, this was seen as something a little bit, I would say, like, you're almost kind of like a trader. Yeah, in a way.
I don't think before the 90s it was so... Like, because there was this, you're moving to the West, it's going to corrupt you. And there are other films prior to this that did depict it. We can link them below because the names are escaping me right now. But yeah, they did depict that basically once Indians move away, then the men go drinking, the women are promiscuous, and now you're corrupt and you're not Indian anymore. This film changes that. It really does change how the NRI is viewed, and more like
it shows like the better side of it,
how can you still be you can still be Indian
exactly
as an NRI, which like the foundation of where that's built I take issue with, but that's what this film does, and it's I think why it was such a big hit for NRIs, because it showed them in a better light, and then be like the local Indian audience who could relate more to this like modern Western lifestyle while still having this like familiarity with the Indian traditions that were being depicted on screen.
Yeah, I think this movie is made for it's made with upper caste, like Brahmins and Kshatriyas, and middle class and above sort of patriarchal views about everything in the movie.
Yeah.
You could also put in cisgender. So there isn't, it doesn't really encapsulate everything that being an NRI is. And it's meant for a particular set of audiences as well. So it misses out on a lot of nuance, I'd say. And it doesn't really depict what it means to be an NRI.
Yeah.
So, and you're correct, it was before the 90s, being an NRI was seen as something not it wasn't looked at as a good thing. You were A, moving away from your family, and B, you were kind of giving up on the nation and going outside to make money.
And if you remember our last episode, it was this angry young India, right? And people were angry, so they left. And now you're giving up on your nation is sort of the mentality. But India's economy was actually faltering, and what they needed the help of was NRIs to come back and invest.
Exactly.
And I think the 90s was where it sort of 90s, early 2000s was when it really changed. And there's hints of that in this film when Raj, Shah Rukh Khan's character, goes back to Punjab to try and get his girl. The reason he's able to get in with the family is that he says that he's there to invest in a factory or a plant.
A beer factory?
Beer factory, yeah. So that was sort of a hint towards kind of what was happening. And these NRIs, they're not corrupt. They're coming back. They're investing. But I think we can go back and talk about how does this movie specifically show how an NRI can still be Indian? Yeah.
I think a lot of the literature I read on the movie, they constantly talk about how, as much as it overturns the stereotype of being an NRI, it still holds on to the sort of backwards mentality of sexual purity for a woman and not drinking and stuff like that. For the man, and being committed to the nation is still part of the package deal of being Indian. It doesn't go away with that. It doesn't say, oh, what we think about women and what we think about minorities is a bad thing. It kind of reinforces it to a certain extent, I'd say. So
it basically says that you can still be Indian as an NRI as long as you uphold these really patriarchal and I hate this word, but problematic parts of Indian culture. Honestly, the worst parts of Indian culture. We have way better parts. Why does that have to be, how you stay Indian? So, for instance, the issue with sexual purity. The character of Simran has no agency in this whole film. It's funny because at the beginning she's craving for freedom, and you think she does have freedom. She's able to go to Europe with her friends. She's able to eventually fall or be with the guy she wants to be, but really it's always the man deciding whether or not she can do that. So for going to Europe, it was her dad. There's a scene in the film where Raj pretends to have a sexual encounter with her, but he stops short of actually doing it because he knows the value of an Indian woman's sexual purity. So that's why he's an Indian.
Exactly.
in his heart. Again, that's because a man decides. She has no agency. She can't, even if she wants to or not, she has to be sexually pure.
Exactly.
Because that's what an NRI Indian woman is. That's how you stay Indian.
Exactly.
As long as you're sexually pure. And for the guy, as long as you respect that rule, really, of being a woman. And then at the very end, too, for her to be with... She wants to elope. She tells Raj, I don't want to stay here with my dad.
पर तुम मेरे पति को नहीं जानते और माँ जी आपके पति मुझको नहीं जानते अगर मुझे सिमरन को भगा कर ही ले जाना था तो ये मैं पहले भी कर सकता था लेकिन मैं सिमरन को छीनना नहीं पाना चाहता मैं उसे आंख चुरा कर नहीं आंख मिला कर ले जाना चाहता हूं मैं आया हूं तो अपनी दुल्हनिया तो लेकर ही जाऊंगा पर जाऊंगा तभी जब बाबूजी खुद इसका हाथ मेरे हाथ में देंगे.
And he's like, no, I'm an Indian. In my heart, I have to get your parents' blessings first. So again, that was him deciding what she can do with her life. And then at the very end, her dad, once he says it's cool, gives them their blessing, then they're free to be together. Again, a man deciding. So it's, yeah, she has no agency. And her mom, is an interesting character because it at the beginning seems like she doesn't also have any agency because she can't say anything about her husband or make any decisions. But there's an interesting point where when she finds out Raj and Simran love each other so much, she gives her jewelry to them, which is kind of bad for her if anyone finds out. So in a way, within the confines of this patriarchal construct, really, she's able to have some sort of agency. But again, it's really constricted. And it's never really talked about in the film. So yeah, for the women in this film to be to still be Hindustani, you have to be asexually pure and then follow whatever the Indian man tells you.
Exactly.
Which sucks.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. When it comes to Simran and kind of her character, she has zero agency, and it's never that idea of being Indian is always being told by a man as well.
Yeah.
It's very rare for Simran to be oh, being an Indian is XYZ. And it's kind of strange, really, because you would want a different perspective, and you would want Simran to say no, I actually want to go with him because I kind of want to break the mold of the society we're in. But the film doesn't allow that.
Yeah.
Which is a shame.
And this is what I take issue with. This film has always sort of in popular culture been highlighted as this film the woman can make her decision to love whoever, but really, can she?
No.
Can't she? Because okay, this guy A was chasing her and kind of being a creep at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then she has no decisions really in this film. It was all guys making the decision for her. So no, she doesn't have any freedom in this film, in my view.
Yeah, no,
at least.
I think you're right.
So.
No.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So
no, there's a really good quote I found by Jenny Sharp in her essay "Gender, Nation, and Globalization." It says, despite its overturning of the NRI stereotype, then the film is not about the overseas Indian coming home so much as the India that never left them. DDLJ does not attempt to reproduce the reality of the British Indian experience so much as to transplant a typical Indian family to a foreign locale. And I think that's a perfect summation of the movie and its characters, or the NRI characters. It's these people who left India and they stuck to the idea of what India was, and just moved here, which I think is very true
It's
of NRIs here.
so true.
Like right now, I can like point to, like you can throw a rock and hit two people who think alike, and it's like they have the worst regressive views.
Yeah. And it's funny, you go back to India. I don't know if this is the same for you.
Oh, no, it's true.
And people there are like,
yeah,
so much ahead in thinking. Like, I think, when it's like almost coming, you have to hold on so tightly to this Indian like idea of what Indian tradition or cultures are, that it becomes something so warped that you don't even like what is it anymore at this point.
It's like a perfect example is now finally it's legal to be gay in India. The Supreme Court overturned this colonial rule that said you couldn't have sex like that was like sodomy based sex. So obviously it was targeting homosexuals, and within that law it also targeted transgender people and lesbians as well, and any type of sexuality that wasn't heterosexual. So all of a sudden you have this rule that's overturned, this law that's overturned, but there are NRIs right now who hate that idea. And it's kind of a perfect quote by Jenny Sharp, because the film DDLJ kind of shows that in a way with sexual politics regarding Simran.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, even not to get too political, but what's going on right now in India with the current prime minister, you have a lot of NRI supporters, which a lot of people seem to be like, who are not Indian, at least when I speak to them, are like very shocked by like how, like, why are there so many NRI supporters of Modi? But when you think about it, like, and this NRI experience and this holding on to these regressive, for lack of a better word, Indian customs or traditions or ideas of what it is, really, their interpretation, you can see like where that kind of stems from. So no,
absolutely right.
So while we've been talking a lot about the NRI experience or the sexual politics of the film, let's also talk about the changing market for Bollywood or for Indian cinema, because at the end of the day, this 3-part series is about how this local cinema, Hindi cinema, transitioned into this worldwide thing known as Bollywood. So NRIs, I mean, you sure know there are a lot of Indians outside of India. A lot. And something that the Hindi film industry noticed, and hey, look at that, you have this huge market now of people who have experiencing really different things, and like experiencing different things than the local Indian audiences. So obviously making films targeted towards that, towards them, and themes that they would be interested in would be smart. And I think DDLJ was kind of the start of everything.
There were so DDLJ is like a family love story of sorts. It's still about being family and being an Indian family. There are a lot of films that came before it, like Hum Aapke Hai Kaun released before this film. There was Hum Saath Saath Hai that released after. So there's like a lot of films that were, and Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum. So there's tons of examples of these films that were about being an NRI.
Kuch Kuch Hota Hai.
No. So there's like a lot of films that are about being Indian and being like NRI, which is a great like subject matter. But obviously what they realized was there's like a huge market, because a lot of people before, they were watching cassettes of Bollywood movies. And
I was.
Exactly. And all of a sudden Bollywood filmmakers or like film producers started seeing this market, and they decided to make films that targeted them. And again, like you can talk about how accurate they were, But I think in terms of just appealing to the common denominator of like what it means to be Indian and what it means to, or holding on to an idea of being Indian, was so strong in these people and like NRIs that they went to cinema all the time. So
and I am not absolutely sure, but I think DDLJ has done better abroad than it has done within India.
Yeah.
I think like in terms of box office numbers, it's actually made more money outside of India. It's very telling.
And I think it started this sort of outward looking mentality of Bollywood filmmakers, because it came at a time when India opened its markets to foreign investment and more neoliberal like economic ideals, and it's sort of, to this day, it's like becoming a huge thing for mainstream Bollywood films to do well in overseas markets. 2017, like the box office collections outside of India for Bollywood films was $367 million, which is quite a lot of money. Like, it might not seem a lot compared to like the $1 billion that Avengers is making, but it's a lot of money, and they're still like going crazy. And I read recently that China movies are like, Indian movies are really popular there, because they're kind of getting tired of like Hollywood blockbusters like Transformers and Avengers and all the superhero stuff, and they're watching like movies like Dangal, which is about two wrestlers from Haryana, India. So it's great.
Yeah. Would you say, Ankur, that Bollywood, this worldwide phenomenon, it's really comes from on the backs of NRIs? Because that's how, Hindi cinema, from what it was, changed into Bollywood. Like, when people think Bollywood, they think it's all of India, India's film industry, which it's not, as you know now. It actually is just Mumbai's based cinema.
Yeah.
But it's so big. And I would argue, like, it's really from NRIs, like from so many Indians moving out and producers noticing that and making films that sort of blend this like Indian mentality with Western influences. So it's like Indians can kind of, relate to it, then NRIs can relate to it, and then also people who just don't know really Indian cinema. It's like something easier for them to connect with than like other films, because they're like, okay, I can see like there are some like Western elements in the film. Would you say that, or what are your thoughts?
I don't know. I definitely think for the transition to happen, the NRI market, the diasporas they played a huge hand in it, to take it as far as they did. I mean, obviously $367 million in 2017 is a lot, but at the same time, I think it's like they still have to cater to Indian audiences. Like Bollywood people, like filmmakers, they still have to make movies for the core group. And I think a lot of movies now that are coming out, like some of the middle class like comedy dramas that are happening, like Shubh Mangal Savdan, Bareli Ki Barfi, Lukka Chupi. All these films are about middle class issues and middle class people in India. It's not like the movies are taking an inwards look all of a sudden. It's still about being Indian, and not being the NRI Indian, but just like the Indian. So I'd say a big part, but not.
Yeah, well, I think like the period we're looking at, the 90s, early 2000s, because you're talking about now, which is different, but 90s, early 2000s, which is when, like, I think Bollywood became,
Yeah, and then
worldwide.
Okay, if you were to say like 90s, I'd say
Doom.
Yeah.
Like Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gham.
Yeah, and okay, in that sense, yeah, because I can think of a lot of movies that take place outside of India and are about NRIs in a way, or at least about Indians traveling outside.
And like also when you're thinking of actually making the films, now you have like this whole community sort of outside. You have a lot more connections outside. There was even a movie shot here in Calgary, and they used like some house in Cochrane, and I think there was like an Indian family that lived there, and they just used it to shoot. So I mean, now you had more connections to actually go out and then film these beautiful locations, and the local Indian audience could be like, whoa, let's go do some tourism there. Or like, wow, that's the experience to go abroad. And then NRIs are like, whoa, that's where I live. But it's like India, like Indian people. I'm Indian. I can relate, Like, I think that's why.
No, you're absolutely right.
Have done so well.
Speaking of thus, like a good example
Speaking
was
of thus.
when I first saw that movie in India. I think it was like around the time my parents were like, yeah, we're going to move to Canada. So that was like my first experience with like Canada. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And when I moved here and I watched Thus again, I started seeing like the local like land spots, like Harry Hayes building is one of the places they shot.
Harry Hayes, Eau Claire.
Eau Claire, McMahon Stadium. And I'm like, oh, hey, that's where I know that place.
Yeah. McMahon Stadium in the film, which is here, it's like a, football.
American football.
Or Canadian football.
Yeah, I guess Canadian football.
CFL. But in the film, it's like a international soccer game.
Yeah, exactly.
Where a bomb is gonna happen or explode.
Like India, Canada is playing, and
I tell that to my non-Indian friends, and they laugh so hard because McMahon Stadium is so minor in our city. That's just like, wow. Yeah. It has such a big. It's like in the spotlight in this film.
I think there's like other movies too, like Humko Deewana Kar Gaye, that's about like a Indian person moving to Canada and stuff like that. And it's shot in Calgary, and you see like I think it's Sanders Street Station.
Oh really?
And you see like the ticker for like the old one, not the new one. So you see like Whitehorn Station or whatever station it's showing, and it's like, hey, I know that place.
Like, I walked there.
Exactly. So and it's like, it's really, like you said, it's like really fun to like spot your place, and at the same time these movies are about being Indian and like holding on to your values, so you get a little bit of that too.
There's like so much talk in Hollywood now, like not enough representation, whatever, and I think Bollywood was doing it before. They were like, okay, we're just gonna do what Hollywood is, and we're just gonna make films about people who are living in the West, where us, which is pretty cool. DDLJ was quite the game changer, and it also Karan Johar was in the film, acted in. He's so skinny and young, and he ended up becoming like the king of NRIs.
Pretty much.
Like all his films are for NRIs, essentially.
Pretty much. I think
like they're about NRIs, they're for NRIs, like
I think when it comes to Karan Johar, he deserves his own episode, but
we'll do one.
Watch out. And I think he really made it like about like NRIs, and he like marketed his films to it. Like his biggest film, Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gham, is so much about being like holding on to being Indian and like an Indian family existing outside. And again, this movie does not, Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gham does not do it accurately, I think.
Oh no.
Not even close.
Oh no. Again, the sexual purity thing comes up too, which again,
true.
I love Kabhi Khushi because Hrithik Roshan in that film is a babe. But anyways, that's for a different episode.
When we talk about these movies, it's really, I think being NRIs, it's really tough to talk about them because we know what it's like to being, I think, like having the intergenerational conflicts, the politics and this and that, and it's really tough to like watch these movies now and be like, that's accurate.
Yeah.
Or like, I can believe that enough to like watch this movie. So
yeah, because it shows you like let's take DDLJ for example. It shows you that if you follow these certain rules set in this sort of patriarchal way, then you can still be Indian, but it doesn't show you the struggle really. So let's take for instance Simran. Someone like that in real life would be struggling with their family, and like this concept of like ABCD, American born, confused Desi, like that sort of stuff comes up. Like, am I Indian? Am I like West? Like, how do I balance that? Because again, like that person has no agency. Even for the guys too, like having to I don't know.
Oh yeah, I think like when it comes to like I think when it comes to like depicting like Indian like NRI men, it's so they kind of focus on a certain version of men, which is like upper class.
Yeah.
So they always don't have a lot of struggles, I think.
Yeah.
Or at least they don't show it, or they don't even discuss it even the smallest amount or like hint at it.
Yeah.
So watching these movies now, it's like it's really tough to, I guess.
Yeah, because in DDLJ, Raj like fundamentally doesn't change at all. He's still this like kind of spoiled rich kid. He just shows his true colors in the film. Like he respects his elders and respects women, you could say. Like that's, I don't know. But like Simran on the other hand completely has to change like fundamentally who she is to be with the one she loves.
Yeah.
And that's also the same in Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gham, I think, because the character of Pooh, best catchphrases ever, she also has to change from wearing like short clothes, even though that's what she wants to do and she's free to do that. To be like Indian, she has to like wear her salwar kameez and do like puja or whatever, and it's kind of like shown off in a comedic way, like like her like blouse is like slipping or whatever, but she's trying. But again, she has to do that while as the men don't really have to. So it's very interesting.
I think there are better films when it comes to like an accurate representation of NRI experience. There are movies like My Beautiful Laundrette, Bhaji on the Beach, Bend It Like Beckham, the new one, which was done by Gurinder Chadda, about the Blinded by Light.
Yeah, Blinded by Light.
Those they're
Monsoon Wedding also to some degree.
Yeah, so those are films about NRIs, made by NRIs, except for My Beautiful Laundrette. It's done by Stephen Frears. But they're still about, like, they give a little more of an accurate representation of what it means to be NRI, because they show the good times and the bad times, or at least discuss them in a more honest way.
Yeah, or like explore sort of the whole facet of being living in this foreign world when you come from, who are you really?
Like Bend It Like Beckham to this day like holds up for me.
Yeah,
because
totally.
Like knowing what I know now about like politics and gender and all of this and race and nationality and whatever, I still think Bend It Like Beckham is a better film to depict an NRI experience than DDLJ.
Yeah. Absolutely. But DDLJ has cool songs.
That's true.
Childhood favorites. So it's got that going for it.
Yeah.
And some iconic imagery. And yeah, that's the end of our 3-part series. So we hope you enjoyed it and learned a bit about the journey of Hindi cinema to the worldwide phenomenon known as Bollywood. So yeah, we do not know what we're gonna do next. Probably not a series for a little while. I think we're just gonna explore some other topics. We've got quite a few on our list, so
yeah,
we will catch you next month. Something fun. But again, if you liked what you heard, please do share with your friends, family, and coworkers.
Family.
Yes.
Of course, because we've been talking about family.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Respect your elders.
Yeah.
Be a good Indian.
Yeah.
Follow us on Instagram at PKP Podcast. And
listen to us on YouTube at Parde Ke Piche Podcast.
And listen to us on SoundCloud at pardekepiche.podcast. And if we have other streaming sites, eventually we will let you know on our website.
We're looking into it.
We are looking into it. But thanks again for listening. And this is Raeesa and Ankur signing off.
Bye.